Welcome back, everyone, to Center Stage, the podcast that takes a deep dive into the world's most powerful theater productions. Today, we're strapping in for a journey through Devon's green pastures and the mud-soaked trenches of World War I, guided by a creature of heart, wood, and leather. Yes, we're talking about the National Theatre's monumental award-winning play, Warhorse. Now, Warhorse is a play based on the book of the same name by writer Michael Morpurgo and adapted for the stage by Nick Stafford. Originally, Morpurgo thought they must be mad to try to make a play from my best-selling 1982 novel. But the play would become a great success. Now, the early development of the National Theatre's stage production of Warhorse was a long, workshop-based process, which faced significant creative challenges, particularly revolving around how to depict the central horse character, Joey. Well, the idea began when Tom Morris, who would co-direct, was determined to create a show featuring the work of the South African-based Handspring Puppet Company, known for their life-sized animal puppets. When Morris approached Morpurgo, the author was initially highly skeptical, believing there is no way that puppets can enact the seriousness of the First World War. Well, Morris invited Morpurgo to view footage of Handspring's work, specifically a life-size giraffe puppet. Morpurgo was deeply moved by the giraffe, realizing that the puppets had the capacity to somehow breathe life. This demonstration was the turning point that allowed the project to then move forward. Now, playwright Nick Stafford was brought on to adapt the novel, which was told in the first person by the horse. He faced the immense challenge of translating a horse's internal voice and the epic scale of World War I into a compelling theatrical narrative, all while centering it on a non-human puppet. Now, the show was developed over a period of about 2 years through intensive workshops at the National Theatre. This devised theater approach was crucial to fusing the narrative with the puppet technology. Now, Handspring's Adrian Kohler and Basil Jones began designing and building prototypes. The earliest prototypes were purely functional tests, with one prototype being described as looking like a grasshopper from the front. They settled on the Bunraku style of puppetry, where the puppeteers are fully visible, not hidden. It became clear that the horse Joey would require 3 puppeteers to achieve the necessary life and emotional depth. The puppets were constructed from materials like cane, aluminum, and Tyvek, with intricate internal mechanisms like cables and levers to control the subtle movements that give the illusion of breathing, flickering ears, and walking. Now, the puppeteers in cast worked with a movement coach and even visited a cavalry battalion to understand the behavior and physicality of horses, ensuring the puppets' movements were emotionally truthful rather than purely technical. Ray Smith's set design was minimalist and crucial, featuring a large irregular projection screen, on which video and sketches provided context, moving from the Devon countryside to the harrowing landscapes of the Western Front. The show would premiere in October of 2007 at the National Theatre in South Bank, London, and would later return from September of 2008 to March of 2009. The critical and audience reaction focused almost entirely on the revolutionary nature of the production. The life-size horse puppets, Joey and Topthorn, were the absolute highlight, described by critics as conveying true emotion and breathing, running, and even dying with unbelievable realism. Reviewers noted that within minutes, the audience entirely forgot the 3 visible puppeteers operating each horse. Ray Smith's set design was highly praised. It used a minimalist stage backed by a large torn paper screen onto which pencil and charcoal drawings and animation were projected, effectively transitioning the setting from the Devon to the horrors of the French trenches. Now, the premiere was immediately recognized as a landmark achievement. with the production going on to win multiple awards, including the Olivier Awards for Best Set Design and Best Theater Choreography. By April of 2009, Warhorse then transferred to the West End's Gillian Lynne Theatre. The production met with critical acclaim for its powerful use of life-sized horse puppets. Warhorse was not only popular with audiences, playing to 97% capacity in 2010, subsequently breaking the record for the highest weekly gross for a play in the West End. But in December of 2010, Warhorse was dubbed the theatrical event of the decade by the Times. That's pretty awesome. The production ran for an impressive 7 years, finally closing on March 12th of 2016 after more than 3,000 performances. Now, one of the most notable actors in the original West End cast was Kit Harington, who played the lead role of Albert Narracott. This was his professional stage debut and a major role he held just before he was cast as Jon Snow in HBO's Game of Thrones. Now, just like the premiere, the Handspring Puppet Company's life-size horse puppets were the heart of the show and continue to draw immense praise for their artistry and emotional impact. Well, by April of 2011, as a co-production of the National Theatre and Lincoln Center Theatre, Warhorse opened its new production at Broadway's Vivian Beaumont Theatre, where the British creative team was met by an all-new American cast, running for a total of 718 performances. Now, the Broadway cast starred stage, film, and television actor Seth Numrick and musical theater actor last seen in the 2022 off-Broadway production of Little Shop of Horrors, Mr. Matt Doyle. The Broadway transfer was a major winner at the 65th Annual Tony Awards in 2011, taking home 5 Tony Awards for plays, plus a special award given to Handspring Puppet Company. Now, in reviewing the Broadway production, Ben Brantley wrote in the New York Times, "It is how Joey is summoned into being, along with an assortment of other animals, that gives this production its inevitably theatrical magic. Beautifully designed by Ray Smith and Paul Constable, this production is also steeped in boilerplate sentimentality. Beneath its exquisite visual surface, it keeps pushing buttons like a sales clerk in a notions shop." Brantley suggests the implicit plea not to be forgotten applies not just to the villagers, soldiers, and horses portrayed here, but also to theater as an evanescent art that lives on only in audiences' memories. Judged by that standard, much of Warhorse evaporates not long after it ends. But I would wager that for a good while, you'll continue to see Joey in your dreams. Now, as a special tribute to the continued success of Warhorse, Steven Spielberg directed his first film to tackle the events of World War I. Now, Spielberg's adaptation was characterized by its sweeping classical Hollywood style, often compared to the work of director John Ford, and relied heavily on practical efforts, using about 5,800 extras and minimal CGI to depict the war's chaos and the beauty of the English countryside. Now, the film was both a critical and commercial success, garnering 6 Academy Award nominations, 2 Golden Globe nominations, and was actually named one of the top 10 films of 2011 by both the American Film Institute and the National Board of Review. Well, by December of 2012, Warhorse would open its production at the Arts Centre Theatre in Melbourne, Australia, before transferring to Sydney and then on to Brisbane. The Australian staging was a co-production between the National Theatre of Great Britain and Australian producers Global Creatures. The production featured an all-Australian ensemble cast of 33 actors and puppeteers, including newcomer Cody Fern in his major stage debut. Now, in October 2013, a significant cultural event began, marking the first time a major play about World War I would be staged in Germany since the war began. The venue, the Theatre des Westens, had a long history and was noted for being a theater previously attended by historic figures, adding significance to the premiere of a play about the devastating consequences of the war. Now, the production was performed by a complete German cast. Author Michael Morpurgo attended the Berlin opening night and commented on the surreal but powerful experience of seeing an English play translated into German. It has a full German cast singing English folk songs completely in German. The German production was particularly noted for its theme of reconciliation and its anti-war message. One observer called the play the greatest anthem to peace ever seen on the stage, which resonated deeply in a theater that had previously hosted leaders who, well, instigated the war. Now, the largest landmark production that required a unique creative process focused on full cultural translation and intensive training to master the signature puppetry, began in September of 2015 when the show made its international premiere at the National Theatre of China in Beijing. The production was a major collaborative effort between the National Theatre of China and the National Theatre of Great Britain. Now, unlike some international productions which might only use local actors, the Chinese version was fully translated into Mandarin. All dialogue, songs, and spoken elements were performed in Chinese. This required a deep level of cooperation between the two national theaters, with the National Theatre team working on the ground in China for several months with the National Theatre China actors and puppeteers. The NTC president stated that the collaboration served as a valuable learning opportunity, allowing the Chinese team to gain insight into the UK's staging techniques, theatre management, and actor training. Well, the successful transfer of the production hinged on the Chinese team mastering the intricate puppetry. The creative process involved intense training for the Chinese puppeteers to embody the animal's movements, sounds, and breath. A puppet show director noted that the casting focused heavily on finding puppeteers with the sensibility to listen to one another and work in a seamless team, which is critical for the one-creature, three-person illusion. Chinese director Li Dong commented that the producing volume of this play is some 15 times larger than usual plays, highlighting the immense scale and complexity of the full production. Now, the Chinese production was immensely popular, running for over 200 performances and attracting over 200,000 viewers in its first run. Author Morpurgo noted that the play's universal themes of the suffering of war and the yearning for a bond between a boy and his horse resonated strongly with Chinese audiences, despite the show's focus on a distant European conflict. Now, fun fact here, guys, the National Theatre of China promoted audience engagement by offering the first backstage interactive events on weekends. This allowed ticket holders, especially children, to meet and actually touch the Joey puppet and learn from the puppetry director how the horse is manipulated, part of an effort to grow appreciation for theater in China. The creative process in China was therefore less about invention and more about faithful, high-quality translation, as well as transfer of a technically complex theatrical masterpiece. And folks, that brings us to the end of our journey with Warhorse. Now, this play isn't just about a boy and his horse, it's about how ingenuity and humanity can elevate a simple story to an unforgettable epic. The brilliance of the puppetry, how three people can disappear, allowing an audience to fully believe in Joey's existence. Well, that's the kind of stage magic that defines a generation of theater. If you've seen it, you know the power of that final reunion. If you haven't, trust us, it's a moment that will stay with you long after the applause fades. Until next time, guys, do me a huge favor and keep supporting live theater. Take care.